Okay, this recording is for the CIT 107 course, Excel. We're going to be covering tutorial 4. And in tutorial 4, for the first time, we're actually going to be creating some charts. We're going to be looking at pie charts, and the pie charts are going to be based on actual chart data. So in order to create the pie chart, we actually need data to be able to create it. We're going to be looking at data sources. We're going to be looking at category values, which allow us to interpret the data that's going to be showing up in the pie chart. As we look at the different elements, we can see how the chart data itself is going to be used in order to create the pie chart. There I'm showing the different sections that we're going to be working on. Now we're also going to be working with chart elements. Now chart elements in the past used to be created by going to the ribbon or by right-clicking. But like a lot of 2013 functions, the chart elements happens to be a shortcut button, and it allows us to create those or make changes to our charts right off the top. Right now we're looking at the payment function that we're going to be covering. Now I'm not going to go too far into this right now, because right now it's really not going to make a whole lot of sense until we actually have some real values. So just know that this information is here on this page, and you're welcome to come back to it if for whatever reason something that I'm explaining doesn't make sense. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to look at the information that we need. So we're going to go ahead and pull the Levitt file. I'm going to go to my instructor share, CIT 107, the student files, Excel 4, because we're on tutorial 4, and there's the Levitt file. So we're going to pull the Levitt file. Like most of our files, we start with the documentation tab. Go ahead and put in your name for the author and use Thursday's date, March 5th, 2015. Let's go to the overview tab, and that's going to show us the information that we're going to need in order to create our information. So since we're going to be using the payment function, we need some of these values to be inserted before we can actually bring the payment function at all. Let's go ahead and use the first amount of $310,000. Go ahead and put in the comma as well for the $310,000. That's how much our loan value is going to be. Our interest rate is going to be 8%. Now keep in mind, this is the annual interest rate. So we're going to cut it down to other interest rates based on the number of periods that we're going to pay. Now here we're going to put in 12 because there are 12 months per year, and we're going to make a monthly payment. So now we're going to calculate the interest rate per month, and simply put, we're going to divide the annual interest rate by the number of payments that we have every year. So we have 12 payments a year, so our formula is going to be very simple. We're going to take our annual interest rate and simply divide it by the number of payments that we're going to be making. Since we're going to be making a payment every month, that's going to be 12 payments because there are 12 months in a year. Now, if we were going to be making 2 payments a month, that would mean that we would have 24 payments. But in this case, we're just going to make monthly payments. So we're going to take C6 divided by C7, and that will give us the monthly interest rate, if you will. Now, I hesitate on using the word monthly interest rate because it's a period interest rate. It could be bi-monthly, it could be whatever period we choose to use. But in this case, our monthly interest rate is going to be our annual interest rate divided by the number of payments that we're making through the month. And we're asking for a 10-year loan. So here we're going to put in 10 for the number of years that our loan is going to be worth. Now we're going to calculate the total number of payments we're going to make. That's a fairly simple equation to make also, because all we're going to take is the number of payments that we have per year, which is 12, and we multiply by the number of years that our loan is going to be taken for. So it's simply going to be C7 times C9. Don't forget the equal sign. We start all of our formulas with equals. And so we're going to make a total number of payments of 120. Now we're going to go ahead and bring up our monthly payment. In order to calculate this, this is where we start bringing in our payment function. So we go to our formulas tab, we go to the financial button, and once again these are alphabetical, so we're going to scroll down until we get to our payment function. So again, those of you that are going to be working in finance, that you really want to pay attention here. So we go to our payment function and it brings up our payment function argument dialog box. So this is where we're going to start filling everything out. The first field that we need to fill out is our rate. Now keep in mind, this is not our annual rate that we're going to be filling out. This is our actual rate per period, which is our monthly rate for now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on the little box that allows the argument box to collapse a little bit, and we're going to click on C8 because that's going to be our first argument. And now we're looking at the number of payments per the period, so complete number of payments. So we're going to click on that field, minimize it, and here's our NPER, our total number of payments. And lastly, we're going to take the actual loan amount. The PV stands for present value because money is not going to be worth the same in the future as it is right now. So our present value is $310,000. It's going to be worth something different in the future, probably less. But for now, the present value is the actual amount of our loan. So we're going to click on the minimizing field button, and we're going to click on C5, and let's expand it. So let's look at what we've done so far. We're looking at our interest rate per period, and that number is going to be 0.006. Now keep in mind, there are extra zeros here because here we have a percentage. Here we have 0.006. It hasn't been converted to a percentage in the dialog box yet. Now the number of payments is going to be 120. The present value, which is the term of our loan, not the term, but the value of our loan is $310,000, and it tells us pretty much what our payment is going to be. So we click OK, and we get our monthly payment. At this point, you may be wondering why it's in parentheses. It's a negative number. The reason is it indicates an expense. Whenever you pay your bills, you pay your monthly payment, it is coming out of your assets, out of your pocket. So it's a negative number. Now we're going to go into cell C13, and we're going to put in the formula of what our annual total is going to be. So what do all our monthly payments add up to? Well, it's fairly simple. We put the equal sign, and it's going to be C7, because remember, we're going to make 12 payments. Every month we're going to make a payment, 12 payments, and then we're going to multiply that times our monthly payment. So the result is what our payments add up to annually. And again, we get a negative number because it is an expense. It's coming out of our pocket. Now, if you notice, we really didn't use many numbers in our formulas. We used all references. And the reason is, like I told you earlier, we could be looking at trying to make 2 payments a month. So if we were to do that, our payments would actually increase to 24, the number of payments per year. Well, we don't want to go into each individual formula that has this field as part of the equation. Now we have to remember to change the number in this formula, and we have to remember to change the number in this formula. So it just doesn't make sense. If for whatever reason we want to change a number that affects a formula, we only have to make it in one place. So for example, let's say that we're looking at, we really can't afford $3,700 a month. So let's look at the effects if we were to change our loan to $250,000 instead. So as soon as I click on the enter button, you're going to see immediate changes, but mostly focus on the changes that are going to take place in the monthly payment and the total annual payments. So we lock in our formula, our payment goes down to $3,033, and our annual payments add up to $36,000. So there's a substantial savings by going to $250,000 instead of $310,000. But at this point, we're going to try to take our chances, and let's continue working with $310,000. I wanted you to see the difference that entering a number that is being shown as a reference as opposed to trying to change the number within the actual formula itself. So we go back to 310,000, and our numbers go back to 3,700 and 45,000 for our annual payments. So now that we know what our monthly payments are going to be, let's start looking at our projected cash flow. So we know what money is going to be going out in order to make our payments. Let's look at what we expect our revenue, our input to be. So in cell C17, we're going to put in the rough estimate of what our payment's going to be. So remember, we looked at our estimated, at our overview, we know that our payment is roughly $45,000. So we have to factor that into our projected cash flow. That's money that's going to be going out. So we're just going to enter $45,000. Now in the future, if we wanted a more exact number, we would actually make this a reference. So we would actually hit equals, go to our overview, and then click on the annual total payment. So this way we get the exact number, and we're not relying on replacing this number in the formula anymore. If our number automatically changes, so here, let's go back to our 250,000, where our number actually changes to 3,000 monthly payment. If we go to our projected cash flow, we see that that change has propagated to the projected cash flow. But like I said, for now, we're not looking at exact values, so we're going to continue making this a rough estimate. So let's just replace that cell reference with 45,000. So we're going to copy the formula in C17 because this is going to be our annual payment, right? It's not going to change, or we don't expect it to change. So we're going to go ahead and copy this number, and the easiest way I showed you last week was the fill handle. So we're going to copy all the way to L17. We're going to go to the fill handle, click and drag it all the way to L, and then let it go. So the formula copies. Now if you remember, we also talked about the autofill options. If we were going to fill a series, so this happens not to be a series, so we just want to copy the cells. But if it were, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we would want the number to increment. So for now, we actually just want the 45,000 to show up as an annual payment in our expenses area. So now that we filled in what our annual expense is going to be, let's look at our overview tab one more time and scroll down, and let's look at our estimated production. So this is what we expect to produce in order to get our revenue coming in. We have our different types of wines and the number of cases that we expect to make. So let's select the range B28 through C34. And I'll explain a little bit why we don't want to take just this range here. We actually want the headings, the column headings of our chart. So we highlight it, and this is where we're going to be creating one of our first charts. So we go to our quick analysis button, which is right here, quick analysis, we go to our charts category, and the type of chart that we want to put in, it really depends what we want. So let's look at our different options of charts. We have a clustered column, a clustered bar, and we also have a pie chart. Now, since we said we're going to be creating a pie chart, let's go ahead and choose that. Now, keep in mind, this is not the only place that we can actually choose to create a pie chart. We can always go to our Insert tab, and we go to our Charts area, and we have our pie chart here. But we're going to be working with the Quick Analysis button. So let's just do it that way. Quick Analysis, we go to Charts, and we want a pie chart. So let's go ahead and put in the pie chart, and we get our pie chart. Let's look at it and kind of figure out where it's going to go. If you remember the drawing that we had, not the drawing, but the image, we pretty much want to move this chart area into this general vicinity here. Now, in order to move a chart, you have to make sure that number one, it's highlighted, and two, that your cursor, if you look at the cursor, it looks like a plus sign. As you get to one of the borders, you see it become a four-headed arrow. That's when you are able to actually move the chart. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to show you how to drag it first. So we just kind of bring it in and we move it over to that area. But we are going to do it in a little bit of a different way right now. What we're going to do is we're going to hold down the Alt key on the keyboard, the ALT key, and then we're going to drag it up until the left corner butts up against the corner of B16. So this corner here is going to butt up here as we move the chart, and we hold down the Alt key. And as we do that, so let's go ahead and try it. Hold down the Alt button, go down to the key, or actually, I'm sorry, highlight the chart first, move your cursor into position to move the chart, hold down the Alt key, and drag it over until that corner reaches the B16. So there we are right there, okay? And then let's go ahead and let go of the button. At this point, you may be asking yourself, why did I hold down the Alt button? Well, let's take a look to see what happens here. If we do not hold down the Alt button, notice the smoothness with which we can actually move our chart. And it makes it very easy to miss the point that we're at, the area that we're going to put it in. It's not exact. Now, if we hold down the Alt button, I want you to check and see how much choppier it is, because it's moving in increments that lock it in place. You see how when we move it into one of the corners, it just kind of jumps into place? So that's why we hold down the Alt key. So that way the chart fits right into place and we're not off by a little bit. It makes it kind of choppy in increments that the chart moves, so that way it goes right into position. Now, you've probably noticed that our chart, our pie chart, actually covers some fairly important data. So we could take our mouse, go to the corner. By the way, all these little dots around our chart, our pie chart, they're called sizing handles because they allow us to size our pie chart to a different dimension, to a different size. So if you notice, I'm not holding down the Alt button here. So it makes it very easy to just slightly miss, and we're not in the exact position that we need to be. So let's go back to the way it was. Hold down the Alt key and drag it into position. So now, as we can see, it goes into kind of a choppy motion, and now we are able to align it exactly to the end of column D and the bottom of row 27. So when we let go of both the Alt key and the mouse button, we line up exactly on the border that we want to line up to. Now let's look at our pie chart. Notice that the production goal column header actually shows up at the top because those are representing the actual numbers that are involved in the pie chart. And as we look at the different types of wines, that is what is representing the legend and the colors of the chart itself. But we're going to make some changes. And the way we make changes to this particular pie chart is we're going to click on it and highlight it. Notice that we get Chart Tools, a brand new tab in our ribbon. If we click away, that tab goes away. So we click back, but we're going to be working with the chart elements through the shortcut buttons that are given to us by Excel 2013. We open up our chart elements, and very easily we can remove the chart title. That makes our pie chart a little bit bigger. And we're going to show the data labels. So we're going to put a check mark there. And we're going to also make sure that the legend stays put so we know what these objects mean. We have the different kinds of wine, the number of cases inside, and our title has been removed. Now let's change the style of chart that we have. So we make sure that our chart is highlighted, our pie chart's highlighted, and we're going to go to our shortcut buttons here, and we're going to click on the styles, the chart styles button, and we're going to choose style number 12. So if we're not really sure which style we're in, we simply scroll down. If we hover over one of the styles, we realize that these are numerical, and we also get the live preview. As we hover over the different styles, it gives us a preview of our chart of what it's going to look like, so we don't actually have to decide exactly which style. So we'll scroll down until we get to style number 12. There's 9 and 11, and here's 12. So we're going to choose style 12. Alright, so not much different than our original style. Okay, so there's what we went from style 1 to style 12. And let's look at the positioning of our numbers here. So let's say we're not quite happy with the way the numbers are showing up inside of the pie. So let's go back to our chart elements button, and if we hover over data labels, we see that a little arrow pops up, little arrow icon to the right of data labels. So if we click on that, it allows us to place our data labels in different places in relation to the pie itself. So what we want is we want to put them where they're going to look best. So we click on the sub arrow, right? So we go to chart elements and we click on the arrow next to data labels, and we're going to hover over them, and we're gonna actually go down to our more options button. So let's go ahead and click on more options. That is going to bring out some additional formatting, and we're going to click on the, well, we have the label options set up. So we're going to click on the fill and line button, which is the paint bucket. It looks like a paint bucket, and if you're not sure what something is, remember, we can just hover over it and we can get our tooltip. So we're going to click on the fill and line button. We're going to click on the fill option, and we're going to select the solid fill. Notice what's happening to our data labels as we fill this out. So we're going to go to solid fill, and we're going to click on the fill color button now. So go down to our fill color button, and we're going to make it transparent. And in order to make it transparent, we're going to look at, actually we're not going to make it transparent, I'm sorry. So we're going to go to our fill color, and we're going to make our fill color gold accent 4 lighter 60%. So we're looking at what might look like gold. So there's gold accent 4, and as we go down we get accent 4 lighter 80%, and there's lighter 60%. So we're going to click on that. Now we're going to look at our border. So we're going to click on the border entry because we want to change the border to our data labels, and we're going to want a solid line, and we're going to go to our outline color. So we need to scroll down in order to see this. So our outline color currently is blue. We're going to change that. So we're going to click on the outline color button, and we want the gray 50%, accent 3, lighter 80%. So gray looks like it should be here. So there's gray 50%. Now this is 25%. Let's see where gray 50% is. Okay, there's gray 50%, accent 3, lighter 80%. So we go down one row and we get our gray 50%, accent 3, lighter 80%. Notice the changes that took place in our data labels. Now we're going to go to the effects button. So back to our format data labels section near the top, and we know that this is a fill line. So here is the effects button. We're going to click on that, and we're going to click on shadow, and we're going to display the different options in shadow. So we're going to click on offset diagonal bottom right. So we go to our shadow to display the effects, and now we're going to go to offset diagonal bottom right. The way we get to our offset diagonal bottom right button is by clicking on our preset button. So we're in shadow, we expanded that. Go to our preset button, and as we hover over these, we are able to see what the different effects are. So this is offset top. These are perspective. These are inside right. So my guess is we're going to be somewhere over here. So offset diagonal top left. Let's come over here. Offset diagonal top right. We want bottom right. So maybe offset diagonal bottom left. And here we go. Offset diagonal bottom right. So we click on that, and let's look at our pie chart while we click it. Very subtle changes. I don't know if you saw it. So let's undo and then redo. Notice the shadowing that took place around the data labels. Now we're going to change from label options from our data label options. So we got to our data labels through here. We clicked on the button and went to more options, right? So that gives us the format data labels. We can actually click on the drop down and go straight to the legend options. Now the other way we could have done is we could have gone to our chart elements, hover over legend, and then click on our arrow to the right of legend, and then clicked on more options, and that would bring us to the same thing. So let's go ahead and go back to the legend options. We're going to go to the options up on top, and we're going to click on series production goal cases. So now we're going to affect the series of the production goals. So we click on that, and it brings us to a different set of options. We're going to click on the label options. So once again, if we hover over these, it kind of tells us what each of these buttons do. So we're going to click on the series option. Actually, I should say label options. So we must have clicked on something wrong here. So this is series, production goal, cases. Oh, it should be the data labels. Sorry about that. So data labels, and that takes us to our label options, and we go to label options button. We click on that, and instead of the value, we actually want to see a percent. So let's take the value out, put in percent. Notice that the formatting of our numbers stayed the same, and we're going to put a check mark next to value. Actually, we deselected the value, right? We took the number out, so we took it out, and we wanted to show on the outside end. So these numbers we wanted to show on the outside of the pie chart. So we're going to scroll down, and we're going to put outside end. And currently the percentages are displayed with no decimal. So we want to see, we're going to see 1 decimal. So we're going to click on the number tab, and the category is going to be a percentage, and the decimal places we only want to go to 1. So we're going to replace that with a 1. Hit enter on the keyboard, and we finished making our changes to our pie chart. So let's say you don't like the colors that are given to you by Excel when you create the pie chart. I want you to look very carefully when you click inside of the pie itself. If you click once, notice all the little bubbles that show up around the pie. That means that the entire pie is selected. If you want to make changes to just one of the slices, so let's say you want to make the change to the Cabernet Franc, all right, which is 16%, and you can see why you might want to make these changes. We know Chardonnay is the biggest cut, but Cabernet, the blue's kind of a very close color. So we're going to click over the Cabernet Franc pie. Notice that the bubbles no longer appear around the rest of the pie. They only appear on the Cabernet Franc slice. That's it. Okay? So we go to our home tab, and we're going to change the fill color. So we go to our fill color, and we click on the arrow. We're going to go to our green accent 6, lighter 40%. So green is here, green accent 6, and lighter 40% is right there. So our Cabernet Franc now changes from that blue color that it used to be to a slightly green color. And notice that also the legend changes as well. That changes the color of the pie slice. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually change the color of the chart area. That's back here. Now again, you have to be careful where you click. So right now what's highlighted is the actual pie slice. We don't want that. We actually just want to change the area in the chart area. So when we click out here, that is the area that we're going to be making the changes on. Be careful, not the pie itself, but the chart area. All right. So we go to the home tab, we click on our fill color, and we're going to change it to gold accent 4, lighter 80%. Well, this looks like gold here, right? Gold accent 4, lighter 80%, and that's the color we're going to change to. All right. So notice the difference that we've done, the difference that we've made to the chart. It looks a little bit more colorful, a little bit more attractive, and sometimes this is what you need to give a solid presentation. So this time we really are finished formatting our pie chart. So we want to get rid of the format pane. By the way, every time you see an extra window, it's called a pane, P-A-N-E, not P-A-I-N, although you may want to call it a P-A-I-N, but it's pane, P-A-N-E. So we're going to close our format chart area pane, and this time we are really done formatting our pie chart. Now let's perform some what-if analysis to our pie chart. Well, what if is exactly that. What if our Chardonnay, cell C29, went from 3,500 cases to 5,500 cases? As soon as we lock in our data, look at the pie itself, and immediately the changes propagate to the pie. So our Chardonnay just increased even more. It was already the biggest slice, so now it's even bigger, right? And our percentages also changed. They reflect the change that was made. Let's go back and change that back to 3,500. So our pie goes back to the way it was. And let's look at our Riesling production and change that to 4,000. All right, so now the Riesling production, because that's the biggest producer now, that becomes the biggest chart and the biggest percentage, 30.5. And let's go ahead and change that back also to 2,000, the way it was, because these are just what-if scenarios. They allow you to make changes, and we are reminded that Riesling should really say white Riesling. So two ways to do it. You can double click and go into edit mode, or you can simply go to the formula bar and add the changes there. White, click on the enter bar. So notice that our legend also changed. White Riesling and white Riesling. Okay? Let's look at some more advanced features to Excel that are actually kind of neat. Let's say that we only want to see the production of white wines. The third button in our button area to the right of the chart is a filter button, our chart filter. Now it looks a lot like a funnel, but it's called a filter, and we only want to look at the data for certain wines. So we're going to remove the checkboxes. So we're going to unselect everything, and we only want to see Pinot Grigio, Cabernet Franc, and Ruby Cabernet. Okay, so when we apply these changes, we see, and actually, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. We were supposed to unselect everything. So let's select everything, and we're going to unselect the non-white wines. So the Pinot Noir, we're going to take that out. The Cabernet Franc, we're going to take that out. And also the Ruby Cabernet. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. So we're looking at our white wines. We filtered out the data for our non-white wines. So now, if we just look at white wines alone, 50% of our white wines is going to be Chardonnay, 28.6% is going to be the white Riesling, and 21% is going to be the Pinot Grigio. Let's return this to the way it was. So let's go to our filters and click on select all twice, so it deselects then reselects, and apply it again. And in order to get away from the chart, the selection, we escape the situation, right? So we hit the escape key, and that closes the chart. Alright, in this next section, we're going to work on column charts. So let's go to the projected cash flow worksheet, and we're going to highlight the following non-adjacent ranges. So first, B4 through L4, B4 through L4. We're going to hold on the control key to continue with our non-adjacent range of B10 through L10, B10 through L10, and the next range of B18 through L18, B18 through L18. Now, if you remember when we highlighted adjacent cells, we would get the quick analysis tool. right? The little button. So because they're not adjacent, we don't get that tool. So now we're going to go ahead and go to the ribbon in order to insert the next chart. So if we're going to insert something, we go to the Insert tab. While we're in the Insert tab, we're going to go to the Chart Groups. So here's the chart group. And we are going to pick the Recommended Charts button. Now, why would we do that? We sometimes don't know what would be the better chart to get. Sometimes it'll be a bar chart, sometimes a pie chart. So we're going to click on Recommended Charts, and it'll give us a variety of charts that we can choose from. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at them and decide, well, maybe the cluster chart is the one that looks best. So that's the one that it recommends, but there are others as we go down the list. But the first one it recommends is the cluster chart. So we're going to go ahead and click OK for the cluster chart, the clustered column chart. And we're going to go to our Chart Styles button. So here's our buttons. So we're going to go to our styles and choose style 14. My guess is it's going to be way toward the bottom. And there's style 14. And we're going to click on the styles button again to go ahead and close the styles. Now we're going to move the clustered bar chart that we just did. So we're going to make sure we have it's highlighted, and in the Chart Tools design we notice that all the way to the right we have the Move Chart. So we're going to move this, and we're going to move it to another existing sheet. So we're going to move it to the Overview sheet. So all we do is go to our Object In. We're not going to create a new sheet for this. We're just going to move it over to a new object. So we're going to click on Object In, and we want it in the Overview worksheet. Then we click OK, so that chart moves over to this worksheet. And I'm going to zoom out just so we can see a little bit better. Now we're going to use the Alt key. Remember, when you hold down the Alt key as you drag a chart, it kind of goes in increments to make sure we can line it up correctly into the areas, and the corners line up with the cells. So what we want to do is hold down the Alt key until the upper left corner of the chart lines up with cell F16. So here is F, and 16 is right here. So hold down the Alt key. We have a four-headed arrow so we can see how choppy it is. So we're going to go to F16. So it pretty much lines up with the pie chart that we just created. Now what we're going to do is we're going to resize it so that the lower right corner goes even with M29. So we want it even with M29, so we want it right about there. So we're actually going to shrink it just a tiny bit. So highlight the chart, grab the sizing handle, hold down the Alt key, and once again, see how it's choppy. So we want it at M29. So we want it M29. And by the way, what Excel likes to call this, or Microsoft calls it, is the snap feature. So if you hold down the Alt key, notice how it just snaps into place to the very next column. This is the end of our first video. We'll continue on the next video. There's probably going to be 3, hopefully no more than 3.